The big question. Conference is the big political event of the year for the Conservative Party, but what does it mean to people at home?
Well, that's a really good question, and probably I'm not the one to be asking. What I think we're going to achieve this week is setting out how we plan to take the country forward. You know, we gather here for the first time in 2 years. The last time we were in Manchester was pre the 2019 election, that historic election that saw us sweep across the then red wall and pick up seats that we'd never imagined holding before. And so now it's up to us to explain to those people who may have voted for us for the first time in December 2019, how we're going to deliver for them, to explain levelling up, to explain what Build Back Better actually means. And I think it's going to be a really exciting conference, but probably one that's going to be more policy heavy in terms of announcements from the floor than we're used to in recent times. So hopefully I think people back home will get an idea this week of where we are as a party, where we're going to as a government, and where we want to take the country to in the next few years.
And of course there are huge challenges ahead, and you obviously have talked up the good parts and looking at levelling up and talking about all of that. But of course cost of living is a concern for people in their everyday lives. The fact that energy prices are soaring, and indeed fuel isn't available in much of London and the South East. So do you think those issues will temper the optimism that you've just spoken about? Will there be much discussion about those issues?
Yeah, of course there will be.
Yeah.
I mean, we are fully aware that as we gather here, people out in the country are facing really difficult times. I mean, we have queues at petrol stations, particularly in the southeast of England. We have an HGV driver shortage. Now, the government is taking action to address all of these issues, but it's only right and proper that we spend time here at conference discussing that, because we can't gather here in celebratory mood, as would usually be the case in a post-election conference. We need to recognise that post-pandemic, with everything that's going on out there, we need to be talking about the really difficult issues that hard-working people out there in the country are dealing with as we speak.
And the cost of living crisis, I think, will become more and more of an issue as we move through the winter months. How do you think that's going to be addressed? Because for ordinary working people, that's a real challenge now, given the cost of energy, given the fact that if you are reliant on universal credit, that £20 is coming off at the end of October. How's that going to be dealt with?
Well, we've seen already the investment, millions of pounds into the Department for Work and Pensions, employing thousands of more work coaches, £500 million to help people with the cost of living as it is right now, as well as taking steps on the bigger issues, 5,000 temporary visas for HGV drivers, etc., which will help support those people out there in the country as they go about their day-to-day lives. And I think that over the next few days from the conference stage, you'll hear Secretaries of State, Ministers, and indeed the Prime Minister on Wednesday explaining exactly what we're going to do to support those hard-working people out there who you know, expect us to take the tough decisions to support them.
But I think, Andrew, and I'll let Deanna come back in now, obviously, in a moment, the big challenge is on those HGV drivers, the fact that you do have that backlog with DVLA. I mean, that is a huge backlog. How is that practically going to be dealt with?
It's a huge backlog. Nobody can deny that, 56,000 or so. But what we're doing in allowing defence driving instructors to take up some of that, take the weight of some of these people who are trying to get their tests done right now, bringing in the army to relieve the pressure on the front line. You know, we're taking steps to try and alleviate the pressure on the DVLA as we move forward. But nobody's going to deny that it's not a huge challenge. Of course it's a huge challenge, and we'll expect to hear more in the coming days from the government about what they're going to do to sort of make that backlog less than it is at the minute.
Well, it needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, well, Andrew, I'm keen to talk about your brief, because I think often you get rolled out on media to talk about whatever the news of the day is, and don't get much time to actually talk about the fact that you are responsible within the Conservative Party for helping promote youth and young activists and sort of policy to help young people. So here at conference, what sort of things are you going to be doing to try and get younger people involved, and are we expecting to see a particularly high turnout from young Conservative activists this year?
Yeah, we are. I mean, we've got our highest number of young Conservative members in this party at any time since the late 1980s. That's something I'm really proud of. And we're more engaged as a party with our young activists than ever before. Last time we met in Manchester in 2019, 20% of attendees at conference were under the age of 25. That's remarkable. And it's not what you'd expect from the Conservative Party conference, which is what, blue rinse and pearls. So we are very much a party that is now speaking to young people. Young people are joining the Conservative Party in more numbers than ever before. In the next few days, we've got a really exciting programme of events for young activists, people who've never been to conference before. before, so we can hear from them their ideas about how we tackle the issues that are important to them. I mean, no generation has been more affected by the pandemic and the lockdown than the under 25s, I would suggest, in the country right now. They've had their school, time at school disrupted. If they've gone to university, that's been completely different. The jobs market completely closed down. They've been unable to travel, and the jobs market collapsed. So we've got to listen to them, listen to their ideas, because some of the best ideas I've heard in terms of how we get through the next years have come from young activists under the age of 25. And I think it's really important that as a party, we listen to them, because they're going to inherit whatever we do, the decisions we take, the implications of those decisions, they will inherit that, and they will inherit this country. And so we've got to listen to them and take action accordingly.
The sad thing for you two is I remember the Young Conservative conferences in the late 1980s, so, and they were a lot of fun. So it is about making...
There's still a lot of fun.
A lot of, it is about making politics relevant to young people. And how do you see this week flowing in relation to that? What sort of subjects are you going to tackle?
Oh, we're going to be talking about education. That's going to be a huge part of what we're talking about. We're talking about getting the skills necessary to get into the jobs market in 2021. We talk about climate change. That's a huge issue for a lot of people out there, not least people, young people, who rate it as one of the biggest issues facing the world right now. And we'll talk about the cost of living, because actually a lot of the issues facing young people are the same issues that are facing people of any generation out there. So although, yes, we'll be focusing on those issues that I just said, we will also be talking about the big issue. We'll talk about global Britain. We'll be talking about what it means to be a proud unionist, for example. What it means to be a Scottish Conservative or a Northern Irish Conservative, for that matter. So it's going to be a really interesting conference. I can't wait to hear their ideas and hear what they've got to say over the next few days.
Well, one of the questions that I often get asked as an MP, and I'm sure you get it too, is how do you deal with social media? Not just in terms of, how do you actually use it, but in terms of kind of the abuse and things that can come through. Because I know, speaking to a lot of young people who are perhaps keen to get involved in politics, it is one of the the things that really puts them off. So what would your message to them be?
It's difficult, and I could sit here and very glibly say, just ignore it. But it's really hard for young people to ignore it.
Especially on the right. I think young people on the right
absolutely, and women more than men. I mean, I look at some of the abuse that some of my colleagues, female colleagues, get in the House, and the younger ones especially, and it's shocking actually how people with the anonymity of a Twitter account or an Instagram account can lay into and say things that you would never say in person or in the street. So I mean, I don't have an answer to the question. It's one of the biggest questions facing us, I think, today, is how we help young people cope with the pressures of being on social media, especially those that want to get into politics.
And I think we can't just say ignore it, because of course social media is here. We have to use it as politicians.
And for young people, it's a part of their lives as well.
Absolutely right. I mean, when I left school, I remember people talking about their online life and their offline life. There's no difference now. I mean, you are just online all the time, and that's especially true of people under the age of 25 who've never known a world without Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. Which
feeling very old. Very old.
YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.